The wonderful part about Alexander Bruce's AntiChamber is not that it has some form of system or code that tracks player activity and retaliates against it. This game is way more clever than that. It makes you feel watched, it toys with your brain, and it does this through being designed to guess what you'll do. The goal being to get the player to ask 2 questions. What in the absolute hell is going on? Am I high? And more importantly, am I the problem? It is not the game's goal to provide answers to these questions. AntiChamber is not just a notable game because of its unarguably unique puzzles. As you may notice immediately, the game has a striking cubical look inspired by Szechuan visuals and abuses the contrast between white and every other color that exists in like the color wheel or something. I honestly want this aesthetic injected directly into my veins. But beyond that, part of this game's puzzle work is that it constantly plays with non-Euclidean space, which has become more common now with games like Superliminal or hang on, did you just shift reality? Awesome games that execute far more with the concept, but being released in 2013, AntiChamber was really early to the curve. Not only that, but it doesn't use this as simply a cool visual gimmick, it's there specifically to make the player feel like an absolute tool. I promise this isn't the type of video that just summarizes a game, but I think explaining the intro of this one gets my point across very well, not to mention it's blatantly iconic. The game begins asking you to jump a gap directly into failure, only to laugh at you afterwards with a condescending quote as you ask yourself, why did I listen to the game? Am I stupid? It then leads you to this set of 2 open staircases that loop back into each other in the game's first non-Euclidean trick. And shortly after you figure out that all you gotta do to escape the loop is walk back to where you came from, the game still funnels the player directly into a dead end. A dead end it led you to by its own directions. Just imagine for a second you read the instructions to shampoo and it told you to mix it with dirt. That's practically what's happening here. It starts off by making the player fail by multiple accounts, simply through guessing the way players would naturally react to the game's instructions. And if you think wrapping your head around that is too much, you are not ready. This continues on throughout the whole game, teaching you about it through contradiction. It rewards hesitation and in turn punishes instinct. This is a title that's dead set on deliberately disorienting you, but it wants you to think deeper than the face value appearance of a puzzle, even if it won't lie to you nearly as much in the future and basically the rest of the game. So what's the game's objective? Clearly there isn't a story, it features no world or narrative, so the actual objective is a little vague. This black cube that sort of floats around out of reach and occasionally appears to taunt you with its dashing coloring and perfect 90-degree angles. Show off. And you must collect it using the main tool featured in this game, the brick tool. I could use this as a nickname if I'm ever constipated. The tool is a gun that comes in 5 varieties. Blue, green, yellow, period, and black. The blue gun lets you pick up and place down cubical matter you may find around the world. Useful for building steps, triggering or stopping lasers, holding doors open, etc, etc. Green evolves by letting you paint straight lines with any of the cubes you've got, and even allows you to make new cubes if you make the frame of a square with them. Useful for crying at the mounting complexity of this game. The yellow one lets you drag and reposition cubes, so even if they would regenerate from places with infinite matter, you can still get them out of the way. Useful for traversing the world, removing barriers, getting through these zigzaggy hallways that delete any blocks in your possession, and there's probably an unfunny pee joke I can make, but I don't really wanna. Finally, red allows you to spread out your cubes in a satisfying diamond shape, and equally lets you suck them up like sippy juice. This is useful for making staircases or multiplying 2 cubes into ridiculous exponential amounts. I'm actually surprised this game hasn't shown up on those satisfying gaming compilations. Using the red gun here is extremely fun and it's just pleasing to see, except that one time I got silly and crashed the game from going overboard with the satisfaction. Oh yeah, and the black gun just ends the fucking world. Lucky for us, the only thing more satisfying than this gun is the actual puzzles in the game. For all its popularity back when it released, to the extent that I played it, it lost a lot of relevance throughout the years, despite being early to a lot of puzzle game centerpieces. I gotta admit, while replaying this game, I realized it's an absolute short and sweet masterpiece. Over its 6 to 10 hour runtime, you find these clever solutions from Portal and the freedom towards problem solving from games like Breath of the Wild. This is accompanied by a sense of wonder, not just from the game's style, but also for how perfect its unusual feedback loop is. After almost every puzzle, the game rewards you with a comment about either the puzzle solution or the thought process you had while figuring out the solution. It just guesses. And it does something similar when you fail a puzzle to provide hints to guide you on the way. Not only does this strategically manipulate how you feel about your accomplishments, but it also provides the impression that the game is tremendously aware of what the players are doing, watching them. I'm not joking when I say at least a third of the time the message seems to be mocking the player's failures, sometimes even after they succeed. Look at this part near the start where you figure out the game's first mechanical introduction, showing off these platforms that appear under your feet unless you jump. First, the game congratulates and reassures you, and then you turn left to fall square into a hole due to a floor that showcases the exact opposite mechanic. And after you dust yourself and climb back up, you finally read the message that baited the entire interaction, and it's about falling when you least expect it. It is the kind of game where you think to yourself, fuck you, you cheeky bastard, every few puzzles. There's a cool moment where if you start tying loose ends after getting the red gun, which trivializes a few of the alternative puzzles the game lets players use to obtain the gun upgrades, you may reach a giant shortcut that could have saved you like an hour, and the quote is something like, "Sometimes you find things long after they would be useful." And that's just like, wow, this game sees straight through you. So yeah, this game is immensely clever. Even if you are playing the game, you could argue the game is either playing you or playing with you even harder throughout. It's just a game that's smarter than you, and it kinda stings when it points out how gullible and predictable you are, how average your aptitudes can be. It makes you feel like an idiot. It hops back to those questions I asked at the start. I've already told you what's going on, and the game's mechanics slowly reveal the answer of this question as you play. There's a logic to them like there's a logic to everything else, including the human mind, which makes the second question a lot harder to answer. Stupidity is kind of a general concept. A person can be stupid at different skill sets in ways people don't often think about because stupid is usually used in regards to someone's general intelligence. I often like equating stupidity to inexperience rather than a real quantifiable value like IQ. It doesn't take everyone the same amount of time to figure something out and internalize it enough to not seem stupid, which is an idea that, when applied to making a game which intends to test someone's lack of stupidity, requires careful consideration and design. By virtue of making the puzzle a solvable problem, what you're actually creating is a structure, the kind you'd find in a joke. Some promise that calls your attention, leading through to a build-up that culminates in a surprising punchline. In AntiChamber, the punchline is you. Even if you're meant to get the joke, this is a type of scenario you just don't encounter in real life. It's essentially whoever designed the puzzle's intention to make you feel like a buffoon, which turns the act of playing the game into a form of conversation. What struck me as odd about this realization is the overlap between the problem solving in puzzle games and the types seen in real life. It's often easy to compare a real life scenario with a gamified one because games add a layer of separation that can make our natural human behavior more genuine. The type of player that admires exploring every nook and cranny of a game world may not do that in real life even if no one would shoot them for trespassing. Simply because it's not expected human behavior to waltz around places like Nothing Else Matters by Metallica is playing on the radio. I am generally fascinated by this because it's a double-edged sword. It aims both ways. In my experience, the way we interpret and solve problems can change based on our experience with video games and the over-reliance on the feedback loop we've come to expect from them. Thing is, when you're stumped in a game, it's easy to blame whoever made the puzzle. Not in the way you'd blame someone out of frustration, but rather because you have knowledge that the problem was designed to stump you. Turn to real life and you may find yourself turning your problems into puzzles. Not ones with numerical or special solutions, but certainly ones you imagine would have more optimal solutions, correct ones. It's not just that you're mimicking what you do in play. Actually, it probably would be the contrary, the opposite would happen. Brains are just wired to solve problems by looking for solutions. To is human. I think some religious guy said that on something, I don't really give a shit, but the phrase is cool, and when you eventually run into a problem, structure it into a puzzle and absolutely fail at it, who do you blame? One of the worst feelings you could ever have is the feeling of not being smart enough. Not just like you're being outsmarted, but like you're doing something wrong and you have no idea what it is. AntiChamber is the kind of game that consistently has you feeling like a dumbass, like you're not smart enough and can't figure out the solution. But it also gives you reassurance that they know you feel this way. It lets you trust in yourself to notice you have all the correct information to solve the problem if you just persevere at it a little. That's where the game differentiates from reality, for better and for worse. When you feel stupid in a game, you can turn to someone, it's their fault you made the mistake. But when it happens in real life, when you realize you should have had the foresight based on past experience, you finally notice, fuck, you're the problem. Clearly, the mistake is yours in both scenarios unless the game is designed badly, like insert shade for animal well for no reason, but at least in the context of a game. It's also their fault that you figured out the solution eventually. Life has no tooltips, no moments to teach you mechanics, And worse, not redos. We're not even getting into the scenarios where there's no solution. AntiChamber has been my comfort puzzle game for a long time. I play around in it every 2 to 3 years whenever I'm feeling particularly stuck or particularly stupid. And this time the catalyst for the playthrough that preceded this video was actually the performance of my YouTube videos. I make the videos because I love it, but I also kinda stake my future hoping the passion and energy that results from them is financially effective. An activity which is hard to do on no budget. I just feel stupid making videos sometimes. Doesn't matter what I do, if I don't focus on the niche trademark, performance gets impacted. And what scares me is not that some of my videos have less passion behind them than others, that's expected of any creative project you keep up for years. What scares me is how easy it is to fall into the mistake of turning video making into a puzzle with a solution. I dislike thinking of elements in a video as a means to figuring out how to solve the algorithm, how maybe doing those speedy dopamine hit intros would wrestle and dazzle. Heck, for a long part of this video, I've second guessed myself on the logistics behind any element, rather than just putting myself on the digital paper and trusting that I'll shine through based on how doing so previously has only led me to fall right into failure, into the conclusion that I can't solve the problem because I'm not smart enough. And that insecurity spreads out to other aspects, it's not exclusive to this. Just my brain trying to figure out why things went wrong in the face of failure, what I could have done better, and all the while, a terrible realization slowly comes into view, and I can't help but think, maybe the problem is me. Just me. And isn't that? I mean, scary, yeah, but also kinda fucking awesome. AntiChamber is a game I revisit often because this cheeky asshole of a game reminds me, in a safe environment and without really intending to, that it's not just a human experience to feel down on the dumps over lack of problem solving skills, but also an opportunity to get back up and go at it again with a new perspective. It doesn't feel nice, it will never feel nice, but keeping in with the ideals of this title is rather refreshing, as it poses the idea that problems, choices and solutions don't always have to be solved through intelligence alone, but rather through analysis and perseverance and any other elements. The problem being you isn't as bad as it initially sounds, it's simply a sign of the presence of limitations, and AntiChamber is a game that doubles as a reminder of that to me, because it shows that you can take problem solving and see it for what it actually is. Not a puzzle, but simply a sort of guideline that will hopefully direct you to the right direction, to the right conclusion. Meanwhile, anything you do slowly becomes easier and you figure out the many pathways you can take to get where you need to. The final puzzle in this game is a big glass maze that doubles as an exam on everything you've figured out. Almost none of the solutions in it are difficult to come by, but not because they were made easy, rather because you've already seen these solutions before in just more simplified manners, in prior puzzles where you failed over and over till you change your perspective and figure the solution out. This is the core message of AntiChamber, to take problems and not project them to yourself, and to just keep on figuring stuff out, because there's always some other problem you can solve. All that's needed is for you to be up to that challenge. Yes, the game has a particular segment formatted like a climb where the final takeaway is a quote telling you there's more, which the game uses as an indirect way to hint at the existence of the next segment, the next gun. But it doesn't just leave it there. There's a few extra difficult puzzles in the game with more obtuse solutions than you'd expect. These puzzles take you to special depth rooms that showcase a bit about the development of the game, really as a sort of mini reward for taking the time to experience that extra challenge, which makes them kind of awesome. The game doesn't just say what it has to through the funny quotes like this one with a bunny that's also a duck. That would be the face value. This game says what it has to through its design. Hence why I am confident calling it a masterpiece. This is how you develop a game meant to make the player think. But it's too much thinking for me, I need headache pills now.